We're riding on the internet, cyberspace set free. Hello, virtual reality.
Interactive appetite, searching for a website, a window to the world, got to get online.
Take a spin, now you're in with the techno set. You're going surfing on the internet.
In part 1 of this series, we looked at the earliest origins of e-commerce from before the time of the commercial use of the internet. Today we look at e-commerce from the early days of the internet and the mad scramble by businesses to capitalise on this new way to sell products to customers and other businesses. In the early days, the internet was in many ways hard to explain as a concept to people. Today, of course, it seems completely normal and it's rare to find someone who doesn't use the internet. But for most people in the 90s, the opposite was true. This was a time when printed material was really the primary way you learnt about a new topic, so a trip to the library or bookshop was a very common way to learn. Even today, many consider a printed book to be a more authoritative source of information on a topic than an online source, but supplementing that information from a book with online information allows you to see the widest possible picture about a topic you're interested in. This was probably part of the reason why it was hard to communicate to people what exactly the internet was and what it offered, but despite the percentage of internet users sitting at just 1% in 1995, retailers didn't take much convincing to see the benefits of being able to sell to people directly in their homes. The release of Netscape Navigator as the first really user-friendly internet browser marked a seismic shift in how people could use the internet. And support for cookies presented the opportunity for each user's internet experience to be truly customised. This really marked the start of effective e-commerce as we know it today. The Office for National Statistics figures only date back to the end of 2006, but back then we were seeing internet sales as part of total sales sitting at just 2.5%, so we could speculate that in 1999 this percentage sat at 1 or 2% or even less. So the opportunities for online sales in the 90s were relatively small, but at the same time most retailers recognised the importance of investing in an online presence to secure the future of their business, and they were right to do so. During the pandemic, the UK internet sales percentage shot up to a staggering nearly 38% of total sales, although it has now dropped to a more expected 26%, which largely matches what you could have predicted from the pre-pandemic times stats. However, there is still a year-on-year trend where the percentage of internet sales is increasing, with historic data suggesting around a 10% increase every 6 years or so. If this trend continues, by 2040, internet sales will make up 50% of total sales. The start of the internet marked the beginning of an unparalleled amount of change in modern society, and virtually everybody recognised the fact that the world was going to change completely and it wasn't just a fad. Of course, time has proven this to be true, but even so, throughout the 90s, online opportunities for retailers were minimal compared to what could be achieved from a bricks and mortar store. But a few retailers who managed to get the formula just right still became well-established household names in this era. If you were an internet user in the 90s, you probably struggle to remember many online brands, but some really shaped the e-commerce landscape back then. One you will remember is Amazon, which launched in 1995. What you might not remember is that initially the only thing Amazon sold was books. I remember Amazon very quickly becoming the go-to source to buy basically any book you could imagine. For me at least, what Amazon really made work was the fact that there was a selection of books available to buy that you just would never find on the high street. This store alone probably spelt the end for many people's trips to the library or bookshop, because the selection and availability of books far outstripped anything you could find on your local high street. Of course, it didn't take long for Amazon to expand their range to more than just books, and now of course they have countless product lines, both from Amazon themselves and from many other sellers. The combination of availability, good delivery times and competitive pricing has kept Amazon at the forefront of e-commerce ever since. eBay also launched in 1995 and presented a new way to shop, buying from other internet users rather than from a business. It also presented the opportunity for people to make money by becoming an established seller themselves, and reviews and ratings from other users gave credibility to both buyers and sellers. In the early days of eBay, it very much became known as the place to buy virtually anything, often at a significantly lower price than you'd find elsewhere. eBay remains popular today, but doesn't have the same influence in the e-commerce space as it used to. In 1997, Netflix launched, although in an entirely different form to how we know it today. It wouldn't be technically possible to stream video on demand over the internet until the late noughties, so Netflix started as purely an online DVD rental service. In the UK, we might remember Love Film, which offered a very similar product in the early 2000s and was then acquired by Amazon and eventually became Prime Video. Initially, you needed to pay per DVD rental, but in 1999, Netflix launched a subscriber-based service where you could have unlimited DVD rentals for one monthly price. Netflix succeeded because it offered a range of films to rent you'd never find in your local rental shop. The convenience was also a major selling point. You could select the film you wanted from the comfort of your own home, keep it for as long as you wanted, and then post it back when you'd finished watching it. The formula worked, and by 2003, Netflix announced they'd broken the 1 million user mark. PayPal launched in 1998 and gave both retailers and customers a hugely convenient and secure way to pay for services and products. It made offering an effective online retail solution much more accessible for many retailers who perhaps didn't have the budget or means to offer an effective, user-friendly payment solution. However, PayPal did take a few years and iterations to become the payment giant we know today. It only gained true popularity after becoming the payment method of choice for eBay, and this hugely accelerated its recognition and take-up by both customers and retailers. The 90s marks the start of the modern era of e-commerce, and while some of the brands that launched back then are still well established today, many fell behind the competition and no longer exist. I guess what we can see from looking back at e-commerce in the 90s is that the brands that succeeded and are still successful today are the ones who did something new and did it better than anyone else. It's increasingly hard to do something that's entirely new in e-commerce these days, but the opportunity to strive to do what you're doing better than anyone else is still very much alive and key to the success of any e-commerce store. Thanks for watching part 2. You can find part 1 on the earliest history of e-commerce linked to here, and in part 3 next week we'll be looking at the founding of some more giants and the origins of many of the e-commerce frameworks we still use today. See you next week.